Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to get into something that's got people in boardrooms all over the world a little nervous.
Yeah, they should be.
It's the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive.
Or as everyone calls it, the CSRD.
CSRD. Catchy. But yeah, we hear about sustainability reporting all the time. What's the big deal with this one?
This feels different. I think this is a turning point. We've all seen companies making vague claims about sustainability. But imagine a future where you could actually compare the sustainability of any two companies, like head to head, no matter where they are, what they do.
You're saying it's going to be like standardized or something?
Exactly. That's what the CSRD is aiming for. Total transparency.
Okay, so no more hiding behind like cherry-picked data.
Nope. The CSRD is demanding hard data, comparable metrics, details. It's unprecedented.
Wow. Okay, so this is a pretty big deal then. So why is the EU shaking things up like this? What's the thought process here?
Well, sustainability is kind of a big deal to the EU. It's not just a buzzword, right? They've got some really ambitious goals. I mean, they want to be climate neutral by 2050. They want to restore biodiversity, all this stuff.
Which, I mean, good for them. Ambitious.
Totally. But they know they can't get there with like half measures and voluntary guidelines. The EU is trying to build a more sustainable economy, and they're using corporate transparency to help get there.
It's like they're putting their money where their mouth is. We're serious about this. Now you need to show us you are too.
Exactly. Plus, frankly, the old way of doing things wasn't working. I mean, how much can you really trust voluntary reporting guidelines anyway?
Yeah.
Companies would just, pick and choose what they wanted to report, highlight the good stuff, sweep the bad stuff under the rug.
Classic greenwashing.
Exactly. The CSRD is designed to cut through all that. The goal is to give everyone, investors, NGOs, even just regular people, the information they need to make informed decisions.
So instead of just relying on like glossy marketing and press releases, you can see how a company actually operates.
Yes. And here's the other thing. This isn't just aimed at the usual suspects.
You mean it's not just for big publicly traded companies?
Nope. This directive casts a wide net. We're talking any large company, over 500 employees, if they meet certain revenue thresholds. Listed or not, if they have a big economic footprint in the EU, they're on the hook.
Wow, that's a lot of companies. What about smaller businesses? Are they off the hook?
Not completely. Smaller companies listed on EU exchanges, they'll need to comply eventually, but they get a little more time. They've got a later implementation date of 2026.
Okay, it's a little breathing room to adapt. Makes sense. But this is global, right? Tell me more about the companies outside the EU who need to pay attention to this.
Right. Even if a company isn't based in the EU, if they're doing substantial business within its borders, we're talking over 150 million euros in net turnover, they'll need to start complying.
Wow, the EU's not messing around. They're basically saying, if you want to play in our sandbox, you've got to follow our rules on sustainability too. What are those rules exactly? Let's get into the details here. What do companies actually have to report?
This is where it gets really interesting and where this whole idea of double materiality comes in.
Double materiality. All right, now you've got to break that down for me. It sounds like something you need an MBA to understand.
Not at all. Okay, so imagine a fashion brand, right? Double materiality means they need to report on how something like, say, climate change could disrupt their supply chain, like their cotton supply. That's the impact on the company.
Okay.
But they also need to report on how their operations are impacting the environment, like how much water pollution is created by making their clothes.
So it's a two-way street. Like, how do these big sustainability issues impact the company, and how does the company impact those same issues?
Exactly. It's all about connecting the dots between the company's actions and their impact on the world.
Okay, so no more just focusing on how sustainability is going to affect their bottom line.
Right. It's about recognizing that a company's success is completely tied to the health of the planet, right? And the planet's people. And the CSRD requires companies to back up all this talk with real action. No more paying lip service to sustainability.
So this is where the rubber meets the road. What are some examples of like concrete actions companies need to report on?
Well, for one, the CSRD wants to know about the company's plans for a sustainable transition. Like, how are they adapting their business for a future that's going to be shaped by climate change and resource scarcity?
Right, because that's what everyone's worried about right now.
Exactly. And it's not just about reducing their own environmental footprint.
There's that value chain element we were talking about before.
Exactly. The CSRD takes a close look at their entire value chain, their suppliers, their partners, even their customers. Companies have to be able to show they're addressing any negative social or environmental impacts in every part of their business.
Wow. I bet that's sending some companies scrambling.
Oh, absolutely. Supply chain transparency isn't just a buzzword anymore, it's a legal requirement.
So no more burying your head in the sand and hoping for the best.
Nope. The CSRD is about taking responsibility for your impact every step of the way.
And to make sure they're not just talking the talk, companies need to set targets.
Yes. And not vague targets either. The CSRD wants to see clear, measurable, time-bound targets. We're talking about concrete objectives that are based on the latest science, especially when it comes to climate change.
Okay, so this is the opposite of kicking the can down the road. It's about setting a high bar for yourself and then being completely transparent about your progress or lack of progress, I guess.
Yeah.
It's about accountability.
Exactly. The CSRD is all about driving real, measurable progress toward a more sustainable future. And it's not just about setting those targets, it's about demonstrating how you're going to get there.
Right, so how does the EU plan to make sure companies are actually following through? Because, I mean, what's stopping a company from just making stuff up? It's not like they're submitting these reports under oath or anything, are they?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. And that, my friends, is what we're going to unpack in part 2 of this deep dive. Don't touch that dial.
Welcome back. I bet you're ready to hear about the part of the CSRD that has some CEOs sweating.
You already know. I mean, reporting all this data is one thing, but how can anyone be sure companies aren't just greenwashing? How do we know they're actually walking the walk?
That's the big question, right?
Okay.
Well, the CSRD doesn't just bring stricter rules, it brings way more scrutiny.
Oh yeah, how so?
You know how companies go through those financial audits?
Sure.
The CSRD brings that same energy to sustainability reporting.
Wait, so sustainability reports are going to be audited just as seriously as financial statements?
That's where it's headed. At first, it'll be more like a checkup. Are the numbers there? Did they forget anything important? But by 2028...
These get serious.
2028 is when auditors will be digging deep, like really scrutinizing every single sustainability claim those companies are making.
Okay, so no more fuzzy math or vague statements. Auditors are going to need to become sustainability experts. I mean, this seems like a whole different skill set.
It really is. This isn't just about numbers anymore. Auditors are going to need to understand environmental science, social impact, global supply chains, the whole shebang.
Wow. That's a whole new world for the audit industry. But let's talk consequences for a second.
Right.
What happens when, even with all this, a company gets busted greenwashing? What's to stop them from just seeing all of this as the cost of doing business?
Don't forget about the EU's enforcement. Each EU country, each member state, they're the ones who will investigate and penalize companies that don't follow the CSRD.
So there are actual consequences. This isn't just a slap on the wrist.
Not at all. The penalties will probably be different in each country, but the message is crystal clear. Sustainability reporting is not optional. The EU means business.
Wow. Talk about a sea change. Companies can't just treat sustainability like a PR stunt anymore. This is about a fundamental change in how business gets done.
100%. The CSRD isn't just about, checking boxes and making reports. It's about holding companies responsible for how they impact the planet, but it goes even further.
I knew there was more.
This is big picture stuff. The CSRD is going to have effects far beyond the EU. This could change how businesses around the world approach sustainability.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. This isn't just a European thing. It's setting a whole new standard for the globe.
It's huge. So get ready, because in part 3, we're going global. We're exploring how the CSRD is going to reshape sustainability reporting on a global scale. Don't go anywhere.
All right, deep divers, we're back. We've talked about why the EU is shaking things up with the CSRD, and we've gotten into the nuts and bolts of what it all means for companies. Now let's talk about that global impact. What are we talking about here? How far does this thing reach?
Imagine this. Every company, no matter where they are, held to one high standard of sustainability. That's the kind of impact we could see from the CSRD.
Okay, but how does an EU regulation actually change how companies do business in, the rest of the world?
Well, the EU is a huge market, right? So if a company wants to do business with Europe, and a lot of them do,
they have to play by the EU's rules.
Right. So now all of a sudden you've got suppliers in Asia, manufacturers in South America. They're all feeling the pressure to step up their sustainability game if they want to keep doing business with the EU.
It's like this ripple effect, right? Even companies that aren't directly affected by the CSRD are still going to feel it.
Exactly. And what this does is it creates this massive incentive for everyone to get on the same page when it comes to sustainability reporting. Imagine a world where, investors or consumers or, I don't know, anybody can easily compare how sustainable different companies are no matter where they are or what industry they're in.
So no more confusion, no more playing games with different reporting standards, everyone speaking the same language.
Exactly. It levels the playing field for everyone. Companies that are actually committed to sustainability will be rewarded, and those that are all talk.
They're going to get called out.
100%.
And that's got to be good for everybody, right? Investors, consumers, even policymakers who can make better rules if they have all the facts.
Absolutely. It brings us closer to this future where sustainability is just how business gets done. It's not an afterthought. It's not a PR campaign. It's just the norm.
Well said. This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. The CSRD is way more than just some EU policy.
Right.
It has the potential to really change the way we think about business and its role in the world.
It's about time.
It really is. It makes you think about all the problems we could solve if we just had more transparency and accountability.
The possibilities are really endless.
They really are. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.